Oh, okay. Unfortunately, there we are. Okay. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the 14th Annual Buffalo International Film Festival. My name is Anna Chimay, and I'm the Interim Executive Director. I'm joined here today with the fantastic Chet Catherine Pancake and some subjects and participants from their documentary film. We have Jibs Cameron and Eileen Miles, and we're incredibly grateful and honored for all of you to be here speaking with us. Real quickly, though, I do want to just acknowledge we are here, or I am here in Buffalo, New York, and that this is Haudenosaunee territory. This is the land of the Seneca, and we're incredibly grateful to be here. So, you know, I also want to acknowledge our sponsors. First and foremost, NISCA, without whom none of this would be possible. Your incredible generosity is beyond measure for a small org like ours. So thank you to the New York State Council on the Arts, Electronic Media and Film Program, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. I'd also like to thank Erie County, as well as the City of Buffalo, the Delaware District in particular. I would also love to thank the Consulate General of Canada in New York, as well as the National Film Board of Canada, North Park Theater, which is our beautiful Art Deco home theater where we would be screening this phenomenal film, Queer Genius, if it was a normal year. Thank you, Ray. We are waiting for you to reopen. Birchfield Penny Art Center, thank you for your generosity hosting exhibitions and providing the projectors actually for Barbara Hammer's installation, which is related to this phenomenal film. Hallwall's Contemporary Art Center, Squeaky Wheel Film and Media Art Center, Lelena Media Company that made the gorgeous site, Lipsitz Green, Chimay and Cambria, Media Arts Assistance Fund, Give for Greatness, Art Services Initiative of Western New York, the Dark Alley Drive-In and the Abandoned Kmart, where we had 2 magical nights during the festival, Whitland, Cane and Dry, 1120 Projects hosting again Barbara Hammer, Canisius College, the Arts Access Program, Albright Knox Art Gallery, as well as Buffalo, Toronto Public Media. Thank you so, so much. Your support is invaluable, and it's why we exist. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our panel today, our Queer Genius panel, which is linked to, I shouldn't say, but I will say one of my very favorite films in the festival. I don't think that it should be missed. It's only showing for another like 27 hours, I think, at this point. You can rent it up until the last minute, 11:59 Eastern Standard Time, and you'll have a 2-day, 48-hour watch window. So even if you don't have time to watch it before Tuesday, please do. We'll be tempting you a little bit with clips, but that's about all you'll get from us today, just a little discussion and some clips. So yeah, thank you, all of you again, so much for being here. Let me see here. I wanted to just give a quick bio. I don't know that it's necessary for anyone here. I think everyone probably is well aware of all of your wonderful work, but just to make sure, first and foremost, we have Chet Catherine Pancake, who is an award-winning filmmaker, video, new media, and sound artist. They have exhibited at national and international venues such as the Museum of Modern Art, the Royal Ontario Museum, Baltimore Museum of Art, Murray Art Museum, Shanghai Conservatory, and many more places. Pancake's narrative and experimental documentary work has been screened at over 150 venues nationally, as well as broadcast entirely or as excerpts in the US and UK and on the Sundance Channel, PBS, Free Speech Television, and the Community Channel in the UK. Their films are nationally and internationally distributed by Bullfrog Films and Canadian Filmmakers Distribution Center, and they are held in the permanent collection in over 75 university and museum archives nationally. Pancake is an assistant professor in the Film and Media Arts program at Temple University. Eileen Miles came to New York from Boston in 1974 to be a poet, subsequently a novelist, public talker, and art journalist. As a Sagittarius, their 22 books include For Now, Evolution, Afterglow, I Must Be Living Twice, New and Selected Poems, and Chelsea Girls. In 2019, they wrote and directed an 18-minute super 2008 film, The Trip, a puppet road trip film, or a puppet road film. You can see it on YouTube, and I think we'll link to that in the site because you really should. I won't digress too much, but Eileen is the recipient of the Guggenheim, a Warhol Creative Capital Arts Writers Grant for Lambda Book Awards, excuse me. I kept trying to say Lambada. Oh dear. It's been a long festival, y'all. The Shelby Prize, a poetry award from the Foundation of Contemporary Arts. In 2016, we received a Creative Capital Grant and the Clark Prize for Excellence in Art Writing. In 2019, Miles received a poetry award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. In 2020, they got the Bill Whitehead Award for Lifetime Achievement from the Publishing Triangle. They live in New York and Marfa, Texas. And then we're going to skip down to Jibbs Cameron, who is a performer, video artist, and actor living in Los Angeles. Her multimedia performance work as alter ego Dynasty Handbag has spanned 15 years and been presented at Mokala, PS1, Joe's Pub, The Kitchen, Red Cat, the Broad Museum, the Hammer Museum, the New Museum of Contemporary Art in New York, and others. She has been heralded by the New York Times as the funniest and most pitch-perfect performance seen in years, and outrageously smart, grotesque, and innovative, which I love and think is great, by the New Yorker. She has written and produced 7 evening-length performance pieces, dozens of short works, 175,897 video works. Commas are important, people. The poet can tell you. And 2 albums of original music. In addition to her work as Dynasty Handbag, Jibbs has acted in films, theater, and television, internet, web series no one has seen. She has worked as a professor in performance and comedy at New York Tisch Performing Studies and Cal Arts, as well as lecturing and teaching workshops at institutes such as Cornell University, UPenn, Wesleyan, and Yale University. Jibbs also produces and hosts Weirdo Night, which is awesome, a monthly comedy and performance event in Los Angeles. And I believe you stream live from Zebulon now, correct? And so people can watch from anywhere?
No.
No, okay.
No.
I believe wrong. I believe wrong.
I'll start off with this pitch for we shot one Weirdo Night in August that was actually like a movie almost. We had a 4-camera, fully edited, storyboarded Weirdo Night, and it turned out really beautifully, and you can rent it. Okay. And I will, I'm not sure where to put any kind of like rental link, but what's that?
If you pop it in the chat, I'll pop it up online after.
Pop it in the chat. I'm not sure how long it's going to be up for rent, but it is exquisite. I decided not to do any live streaming because it's too depressing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It is a very awkward format, and I do appreciate everyone's patience as my head floats around and I learn to read in front of an audience.
Well, this kind of live streaming makes sense, but not for a show. In my opinion, I don't know.
No, it has been wonderful because honestly, we wouldn't be able to speak to half the people we have this year without this year. Yeah, but let's get into the film. It's fantastic. I thought it might be a fun way to start just by teasing everyone watching and screen sharing a bit. I want to open with one of Eileen's poems that I really love. It's an early one. Yeah, let's start there and we'll keep moving. So get a little recursive imagery going for a minute, and we'll go full screen. And we're not queued up. We're queued up for Jibbs. Well, there, look, I'm teasing you already.
Homosexual in this room tonight?
Nope. Little late to the punch. Okay.
It looks great.
It's so beautiful.
Listen, I am educated. I've learned about Western civilization. Do you know what the message of Western civilization is? I am alone. Am I alone tonight? I don't think so. Am I the only one with bleeding gums in this room tonight? Am I the only homosexual in this room tonight? Am I the only one whose friends have died, are dying now? And my art can't be supported until it is gigantic, bigger than everyone else's, confirming the audience's feeling that they are alone. That they alone are good, deserve to buy the tickets to see this art, are working, are healthy, should survive, and are normal. Are you normal tonight? It is not normal for me to be a candidate, but I'm no longer alone, no longer ashamed. I'm not alone tonight because we are all candidates, and I am your president.
So I thought that sent a really nice tone for the evening. I love that piece, like so many that are featured in this film. It really, Chet and I have spoken a little bit via email about the film and the various pieces in it, and also about their practice, not only as, a filmmaker or media artist or sound artist, but also as a curator, really coming out of Baltimore, Maryland, spending a decade curating work, I think, including both of yours, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess the first question should, of course, go to Chet. There is so much incredible work in this film, and 5 heavily featured, highly prolific, brilliant artists. How do you even begin to decide what to feature?
It's a really good question. And when I see that, I've seen the film on the big screen 5 times and I like it every single time, which is not always the case with films I make. So that's just kind of amazing. I mean, again, I am an artist myself. I'm also I've always been involved, especially in Baltimore, in community organizing, curating, and, for this film, sort of process it. I mean, I kind of did all that work in Baltimore. Then I went to graduate school, actually. And when I was in graduate school, it was in a completely different community. And it sort of was like the percolation of those 10 years of seeing people and meeting people and seeing thousands of hours of work. And, I had David Getze, who's amazing, was one of my thesis advisors. And we talked a lot about the lack of sort of, again, it's like talking about queer work, talking about queer art, sort of reifying and examining and rehistoricizing and promoting queer artists, basically, which is one of his projects too. So when I came out of grad school, I got sort of fellowship, and I thought I've never gotten this much money before, and I just want to work with people who I just really passionately want to work with, or that I think would be amazing just to hear the contents of their mind, because I myself am curious, and people that I love, that I admire, that inspire me. I am traditionally attracted to performance film, sound, literature. I'm not so much a kind of a 2D, 3D artist. So that I knew those were going to be sort of my passion people. And I had was in a collective called the Charm City Kitty Collective in Baltimore. And I was always sort of trying to push them out of their box. And at one point I asked our Erica Doyle, who's an amazing poet in New York, who Eileen knows really well and is in the film briefly, who was sort of the wildest, like a lesbian performer, a queer female performer. And she said, oh, Dynasty Handbag, and that was probably in 2005 or 2006, I can't remember, but I said, oh, well, then she should come to Baltimore. And as soon as I saw Jibs, I just was, I'd never seen anything like it. And it, I mean, it is, in my mind, in the vernacular, I said, that's just genius. And that person is just the humor, the particular take on queer culture or lesbian culture or whatever you want to call it, and just deep physical comedy. It was just brilliant. So I always kept in touch with Jibs, and I always wanted to work with Jibs, and probably Jibs can tell. I mean, for a time I was sort of like, or can you come back, or what are you doing now? Or I would go to Jibs' shows. I'm just a fan, basically. I'm just a huge fan. I mean, and the same thing with Eileen. I mean, Eileen also came to the Charm City Kitty Club, and I had been given her books by a bookstore called Normal's Books and Records. So I had read some of Eileen's work. But as soon as I saw Eileen read, I also immediately was like, oh my God, I'd love to like just do a long observational documentary on Eileen. Maybe it'll still happen. I don't know. But I thought that this sort of particular intellect and charisma, Eileen's just charismatic, and everybody will tell you that. I mean, sort of in the documentary, everybody who speaks about Eileen, the sort of the power of style, the power of charisma, the sort of I super unique, American voice, you know what I mean, regardless of gender, sexuality, whatever. So again, that was sort of just an opportunity. And then Barbara, I had tried to work with Pauline Oliveros, but Pauline we went back and forth and she decided not to do it. And then I contacted Barbara because I wanted to speak to someone personally who was of getting up in years, more sort of an elder, and Barbara responded right away positively, and she understood the project and she wanted to do the project right away. And then Kamei and Rashida I met in Philadelphia. And again, just as soon as I see lots and lots of art, and when I saw them, I was just blown away by the breadth of their project. And both of them also just really deep intellect, really deeply thoughtful. And again, coming from this very particular perspective. That's a queer perspective, that's a female or non-binary perspective, that's an outsider perspective, and it has like a really specific resonance to me. I can't always put it in words. So I'm just extremely, when I look at the film now, it's a complete act of generosity. Also because all of the artists did not charge me money to license their works, you know what I mean? Or if they did, it was very reasonable, you know what I mean? So this only happened because the 5 people that I chose were just in the spirit of it. And it kind of makes me emotional because I never could have done it if there had been like high licensing fees and kind of Hollywood style, things. So I just like these 5, just lucky for me, these 5 people, it's just a moment in history that they decided to come together and participate in it, actually. I guess that's how it happened, I would say. Relational, but also everybody in the film seemed to understand the importance of doing it because it just doesn't exist. It just doesn't actually exist. The cinematic reification of this kind of work does not exist, frankly, unfortunately, in sort of long form documentary, I guess. Although, everybody in the film has been documented a lot in different ways, I think.
Well, I think that these are really important resources and really important records to leave. They're also incredible points of entry to very important dialogue, career. I think it's wonderful, honestly. Between this and the Vasulka doc, so often art documentaries they just don't work. They don't capture the essence of the people that you're focusing on. And Chet, I think you really succeed here. And unfortunately for Eileen and Jibbs, I feel like I know them so well, and I'm like so attached to them and see them as almost people in my life after watching the film. I mean, it's so intimate, the way that you all interact. You're in home spaces, you're in bathroom spaces, you're in closet spaces, you're in performance spaces, you're at a reading, you're walking the dog at the park, you're out in the backyard. You're really everywhere in everyone's life. So the generosity is clear. Also the mutual respect and trust, I think, is clear. So I'm wondering if you could speak just a little bit more about your process together, all 3 of you, just how you interacted in this way. From everything from curating the pieces, which I would think would be in at least small, like Chet, yes, and in small part at least, Eileen and Jibbs, as an artist, you have your pieces that you want to show. So can you talk to me a little about the collaboration, the exchange that went on, and kind of the process of making the film together over the last 5 years, was it?
Yeah, it was very intermittent. I mean, the editing, the editing means, it's very powerful. But yeah, I mean, and also we worked with multiple cinematographers. And I mean, for me, it was sort of just, again, that kind of trust and low key kind of documentary filmmaking, kind of partially observational. There were long exploratory interviews to start that set the tone for the whole piece that were amazing. And just really, again, like genuine, authentic kind of, these weren't like pre-scripted kind of one marketing oneself interviews. They were like completely authentic, very vulnerable, sincere, interviews that were wide ranging. But I don't know, that was sort of, I would get in touch with people and say, hey, can we come and shoot? And I'm bringing this cinematographer this time or this one this time. And I don't know, just extreme generosity. And I'll leave it to Jibbs and Eileen, but and Mariah Garnett shot a lot of Jibbs's work, and Mariah is an amazing filmmaker, an award-winning filmmaker. So that was just also luck that Mariah was generous again to like be there, working in a way with Jibbs that Jibbs was comfortable with. But I'll let these guys speak to that more.
Yeah, do either of you have any comments about the process of making the documentary, how it felt? I mean, it's a strange phenomena as well.
Yeah, I can jump in. I feel like one of the things is I knew, I think we had met maybe in Baltimore, Chet, but I think you offered me an opportunity to see your film. You sent me the film, which Chet made this amazing film about cutting off the top of mountains, you know, which was just a deeply political, smart documentary, information I needed and wanted. So I was so already primed to, you know, like and respect and be interested in this person, you know. And I just think too, reflecting on the time that we worked together and stuff, I just feel like, I mean, I was having a very kind of all over the place moment in my life. Like I had a couple of books come out and I got a lot of more attention than I had gotten before. And so I felt like taffy. I felt like I was pulled in so many directions and felt nuts. And that what was interesting was, so sometimes when you go through things, nobody knows what you're going through. Maybe your girlfriend does, but maybe not. And I feel like Chet did, because Chet kept being there. You know, I mean, I would go to Texas and we would meet there, you know, in New York. And there was kind of I think there was just a very funny dispersed intimacy about the project, you know. And then it made me feel a little bit more at home about my own existence in this funny way. And two, you know, and you know, we all do these like interviews and professional things where we talk about ourselves, and somehow it did feel like of another order. Like I felt like it was like, oh, another me talking about me, but somehow I don't know, the vibe was so different that it felt like almost a break from that kind of thing rather than more of the same, you know. So I thought it was, and I was just really delighted by the company too, of people I knew and people I didn't know, you know. It was just like, I mean, Jibbs and I go back a ways, and just, I love your work, and it was just really fun to be in it. And, you know, Barbara Hammer, I felt odd that we wound up being part of something that had, you know, a memorial aspect, that it was going to be, you know, Barbara leaving us, you know, and to be part of that is just so sweet and valuable and powerful too, you know, so.
Yeah, thank you, Eileen, for saying that about Barbara, and like also just I mean, it was a strange process because I actually didn't think of it in that way, that like, there were so many different points of my life that like the cameras entered. And one of the most vulnerable times was like the last period of when we shot stuff in LA, when I had just moved here, and I was like working with Jack Black, and I was like on the verge of this, like whatever it was. And I was really like, I didn't know what I was doing or what was going to happen. And so I was really scared to like even show any of that to the camera, to the world, because I was in such uncharted territory. And I thought that like all the material that we had, like, I feel like one of the great things about this film is that it's so much about like the artists and their perspectives, and not just like this project. And like, you know, like the projects count, but they're not. I was like, oh no, that shit fell apart in LA. I mean, it to some degree it did. And in my mind, I was like, oh no, like Chet wants, like, you know, like thinking that like it's supposed to build up to this like grand thing that happens to me or something like that. And I was like, sort of like, I don't know. it's going to be disappointment. But it didn't really come out that way. It just sort of felt a lot more holistic and always respectful, always like an email updating, you know, like what's going on. Like I felt like I was really part of the experience, like that. I just felt very gay, you know, just very gay, just like gay people being like, I see you and I'm informing you and I'm telling you what's going on. And here's the transparency and here's the amount of money we have. And here's, you know, and that's like the queer spirit, that it didn't feel like somebody was coming in from the outside being like, so it's like to be this way. It's like, we all know what, like I've known Chet for a long time. So it felt really familial. I think that the parts that were hard for me were just that I don't, like what I mean said, that like, you know, maybe your girlfriend knows or maybe your best friends know, like what's happening for you professionally is really maybe difficult to like put on screen or talk about. Because I look at my parts in that now and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had said something smarter. Like I'm not thinking about that at all anymore, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it was a very, yeah, like I like that word generous. It was a very generous exchange.
Thank you. No, I mean, I think you're fantastic in it. And I also don't like watching myself frozen in moments like this I'll never see again, probably, even though I'll want to. But yeah, no, I think it really comes across in the film, your comfortability with each other, your knowledge of each other's work and lives. It makes us all in the audience kind of feel as if we're included as well. So I think maybe it's a nice time to talk a little bit more. There's a quote that Barbara says at one point that kind of highlights these themes of community, the importance of relationships, you know, and while this piece really focuses a lot on solo careers, there's always like kind of various forms of collaboration that are running through the film. You know, obviously Black quantum futurism, there's more literal forms. And then when you see Flory and Barbara together, they're, you know, very clearly, obviously in a relationship, but there's some collaboration in that too. And so Barbara says something to the effect of, I think there's genius in relationship as well as ordinary work. I think genius comes from hard work, that it isn't a birthright and that it isn't something that's a special talent. I think talent is persistence and commitment and love and not giving up, determination and perseverance. And that's what relationship is. Relationship is genius. So kind of exploring this concept of genius is a highlighted theme. Clearly it's like in the title, to fans like myself, you all are genius in your own ways, in ways that you all define quite differently, which I think is really interesting and a great thing about the film. But I do kind of also love this sort of subtle theme of like community and relationship, you know, as we were talking about a little bit with exchange running through. Eileen, you know, the way that you're presented to me, I saw you as weirdly like a community onto yourself, but also just, you know, that sort of exchange at work there. So I guess can you talk a little bit about, well, that was really largely for Flory, but can you talk a little bit about, you know, how your relationships in general kind of inform your work and your community is a part of your work? Or your communities.
Too. Who's answering this one?
I mean, now I'm just throwing spaghetti to all of you, whoever wants to. I'll try and at least name you if I'm pointing it directly at you, the question, but anyone that wants to.
I mean, I'll just give a little context or like, you know, I mean, this documentary, we would meet up with folks and like people were, yes, seriously going through major life things. I mean, again, the trust, because there were just, you know, all kinds of people, all kinds of directions, all kinds of storylines you could go down. And at the end, and then the editing process was really difficult. You know what I mean? And I had several focus groups and there's sort of like a really experimental cut for like the queer people, you know what I mean, who would watch like 6 hours of this. And there'll be more of that online. And then there's sort of like at the end of the day, I mean, really through conversations with, well, also because of Barbara, I mean, Barbara, told me that she was on, had weeks to live, I guess in February of 2018. And then and said, finish the film, I don't care, just because Barbara was the only person who really looked at footage and had critique. Like none of the other subjects really were just like, get back to me later, but Barbara was really involved actually. And she was also like, because of, and she and Flory were really concerned by the following fall of 2018 about legacy. So we had a lot of back and forth in the fall that was unexpected. So I was on the phone a lot with Barbara, taking all kinds of notes and like basically in some ways handing a lot of control to Barbara. Because am I going to say no to Barbara Hammer? You know what I mean? No. When she has like several months to live, no. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, so I guess I'm just saying this to say that I went to an editor, I went to a professional editor at the end and sort of like showed them several different cuts, a cut back to back, a cut interwoven, and had that person give me notes. And that person said, I think this film is about queer genius and every single portrait should just like land on that so that we get that kind of ineffable sense of each person and don't go down any of these other storylines and take all the experts out. Just really get at the essence of each person. That's all you really need to do. And so that was really validating to me. It was validating to other subjects and other, just the whole thing of like, no, I didn't want a traditional story, but it had to be somehow consumable by an audience, legible. You know what I mean? But I think that, there is sort of a network, there isn't in the art world or in the art scene or in the alternative art scene, there is a huge interwoven community. I mean, it's how we exist. And, a lot of relationships are made standing around backstage. A lot of relationships are made standing at little pop-up bars and performance spaces. I mean, my whole kind of history is that. I mean, those are the spaces that I call home. So the communal aspect. I'm also like, I've been making film for a long time and I understand industrial ways of filmmaking and I kind of reject them, but I also know enough about industrial filmmaking to like make a good film. So that also includes a community of people in Philadelphia because I teach at Temple now. So I had access to film students and I had access to a film community in Philadelphia. That was a bit more, had access to maybe a little bit more astute filmmaking than I did when I was in Baltimore at the time that I was there. So, but I'll leave, the rest of it because I think that there are overlapping communities in the film. But yes, I think that yes, I mean, again, like when Barbara just kind of popped out with that out of the blue after like an hour-long conversation between her and Flory that is a really remarkable historical document. And I wanted Flory to be more in the film, and then that wasn't going to happen. But yeah, when that kind of came out of Barbara's mouth, I felt like it was just an adage to live by. Like, yes, I'll live by that. But I think those are just my notes on that.
Thank you.
I mean, I feel like part of the bravery of the film is the word genius, which is just like part of, putting queer and genius together is really weird, and it's like parts of me really recoil from it because it has this kind of arrogant and, kind of dick quality, and just aspects of art we were brought up with. And usually it's like, he's a genius,
I'm sorry, Eileen, did you say dick quality?
Yeah.
Okay, just getting that right.
So just, and I do feel like an artist that so much, it's like people are always, if I know somebody will say, well, how do you know them? And I was like, well, just around, like we all know each other, the interrelatedness of how I came up as a poet, how I went from, being a poet to being in the performance scene, or how I knew dancers. It's like, it's always like, sometimes it's one contact and that door just sent you into a whole other room full of people, or you have a girlfriend and you break up and you run and you met a whole crowd of people through that person. And then you either flee from that room or sometimes remarkably, somebody that, I can think of somebody that I broke up with 20 years ago. And so many of the people who've been in my life in those 20 years are people I met through her, like her and I have never spoken again, but I am friends with so many of, and then another relationship, it'll be the opposite, so it's just kind of like my relationships of all kinds are so intertwined. And so I thought it was very funny to like for this to be kind of a collaborative kind of smorgasbord of lesbians who know each other and don't know each other, and to be put together under a word that seems so not identificatory. And so I think maybe this was already said, but I feel like the genius word starts to be about the community, the collectivity itself. You know, it is about the arrangement, you know, both the editing of the film and the group, and I think the group of people changed in the time when you were shooting a film. You know, I think at some point this one was in it, and then this one wasn't in it, and the group, and just and then it's just like, is it about chess genius? You know, it's just like it's a very funny, awkward term that holds, I think, the dispersedness of the film really well.
I like, yeah, I agree that Dick quality of you know, there's like a certain myth of genius, and I feel like when I'm teaching you, it's always like you know, you talk to you know, just this person, and you know, in alone and just like struggling, and then like, you know, giving up everything and foregoing all relationships and love and light and, you know, whatever healthy, you know, gut probiotic foods, and just anything that's like, you know, it has to just be this one thing. And it's like, it's really, I think, a pretty toxic myth, and very American, very white supremacist, you know, part of that whole structure. And I like the idea that the movie's called Queer Genius because I'm in it. And no, that's actually like very a little bit embarrassing, and I have to like just, you know, be like, I'm not saying this is someone else's title, but I do think that it's an interesting title because, you know, how like everybody in the last 10 years, it's not so fashionable right now to be queering things, but for a while it really was queering the this, queering the that, queering the, you know, queering the banana, queering, I mean, this is already pretty queer, but, you know, like, and so queer genius, like as a verb, I like that. Like, let's queer genius. Let's like make it, what is it to queer it? It's to take it out of a heteronormative, like fucking trap and all of the things that go with that. So that's how I like to think of it. And that does include like shared authorship, community. Like I can't get away from Eileen and Chet. I'm going to know them forever. Like it will just keep overlapping because it's like the chosen family. And also, you know, yeah, like it just keeps happening. I mean, and then also just to be in the fold with like Eileen and Barbara. Like, I mean, I knew Barbara a little bit, and she was always so nice to me, like just so sweet. And it was like, I would, you know, be like really starstruck by them. And, but just, I mean, it's like such an honor to be in this like lineup. And like more mother, like their music, especially like right now too, they just put out a new piece of music that is just, yeah. And then like Shannon, who was in the film before, is an old friend from Brooklyn. You know, we used to work at this restaurant that I would eat at, and, you know, she was a waitress and in Chick Chick Chick, and like, you know, just around, like you said, Eileen, around.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone ends up in AA, and then we're all like, you know, we have this other really, this plane. No, I'm just speaking for myself.
I mean, it's kind of like, it's actually quite a small world. You know what I mean? It's sort of, and again, it's, I mean, one thing I think I said in the interview with you is like all the people in this film have like very, very, very outsized impacts on their audience, probably in relation to, you know, Hollywood style money. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody's doing fine, I think, and they're making money from their work. But again, that's sort of it is kind of a small community who does this kind of work, who are in kind of, you know, kind of very out, very radical, owning queer, great, you know, that's me, you know what I mean? Owning whatever pronouns people are owning. It's not, you know, it's not that big, it's not that many people actually, you know what I mean, in the world. And you would think there's lots more, you know, like when I first saw Barbara Hammer's film, I thought, well, there certainly were like probably 100 lesbians filming on communes, you know what I mean? And then when I met Stuart Comer, he was like, no, actually Barbara was the only one, you know, like that's the only footage we have, you know, and it's clear now from art history that those images might be the first images. As far as the art historians say, Barbara Hammer's images of lesbians making sex films with other lesbians that are not pornography in the mid 70s, that is the first, those are the only images those are the first images we have. You know what I mean? So you would just assume that it's part of, that's what's happening everywhere, but actually everybody in the film is very singular. There's not another More Mother. You know what I mean? When I met More Mother, I was like, the experimental music world's been I've been waiting for More Mother for like 20 years. And then when I met Kamei, I was like, oh my God, like this is it. And I remember like sending her stuff out and around to people in Baltimore being like, they're like, what's happening in Philadelphia? Like, you know, 10 years ago, and like More Mother, like this is, you know, and then, you know, I always then, you know, I was right. You know what I mean? So I feel like all of us probably too have had these moments where we've met people and friends and been like, the person's not yet quasi famous or not yet in the New York Times, but like you see them at a show and you're like, this is what's happening right now. You know what I mean? And for me, that was Kamei and Rashida. You know what I mean? And they did their first solo art show in my house. You know what I mean? Like I just like right away was like, I want you, you know, you want to be in this documentary, and like I would like to document you, and like I think what you're doing is really. They're like, really? Because in Philadelphia they're just like old hat. You know what I mean? Because they've been here since they were so young. You know, so it's just sort of like the networks and the way that people. It is in some ways quite small. If you're a working artist who works and is prolific, you know what I mean, and has lots of contact with your audience, and who sort of falls in this kind of way. But and then, you know, when I was talking to Heather Love and Tavia Nyong'o, people who do queer theory, then they were, you know, kind of they loved, you know, I mean, the title Queer Genius, like, oh, it started out being called the Genius Project, and then I changed it to Queer Genius, which is kind of weird and corny and kind of weird, but it kind of, like, for me, it had sticking power. It had this kind of weird staying power that would like get through everything, because it's like, those two words are so loaded, and when you put them together, they just kind of like burble around in like their own little weird way, and it kind of felt a little bit out of my control. But then when I talked to Heather, like Heather was like, oh, absolutely, like this is just very historically known, you know what I mean? And to Tavia too, they're like, queerness and genius are absolutely related, all the way back to like Oscar Wilde, you know what I mean? So when the academics were like, this is exactly what's going on, you know what I mean? Then I felt like a little bit more validated. But you know, I know that genius is not at all a popular term right now, and like and legacy is not at all popular right now, you know what I mean? And so the way the film is landing and the way that people are getting it or not getting it is very interesting to me. And it's internationally, you know, I mean, the international fans are, whatever's happening in Europe and Asia, I mean, they're deeply into the idea of genius and analyzing it right now. You know, in Germany, in Korea, long texts, long messages, long interviews, you know, what are you saying? You know what I mean? But I think the US is in a very particular moment right now. You know what I mean? So I just sort of let it, you know, flow out the way it flows out, you know.
Well, I think the loaded works. It does. I love the title. I think it really draws you in, and it makes you immediately start digging into both of those words and wondering what to do. And I think that's, you know, that's a good title if you can hook. I also love it, Eileen, in the film. You bring up Gertrude Stein pronouncing herself a genius, and then saying a genius is someone who can listen and talk at the same time, which is yet another wonderful definition I love in this kind of essay running throughout. And also you said something else. You said, I mean, you all said a lot of things that I could quote. I actually have a whole 10 pages of just quotes that I probably mistyped. But you say, queer genius, you're both damned and elect. And I think that kind of, for me, that paradigm really is captured in the title. So I think it's really wonderful. But yeah, let me see here. There's so much I want to ask all of you. You touched on so many things in that moment there, Chet, that are in my way too many notes. But maybe I'll pop back into the film for a minute, because one thing you did bring up yes, this idea of legacy, but also this idea of like legitimacy as an artist. And I think that any artist can relate to this particular struggle. And any artist can relate to like these moments that we have, right, where we're completely invisible. And then we have a moment where everyone's like, got a spotlight on you or a magnifying glass. And those moments can be really fun and horrific. And same with the moments where you're invisible. I personally love being a bug or a spore or a mushroom that pops up whenever I do. But so, yeah, Jibs, you had a great little moment in the film that I would just love to pop back in for our audience and just tease it a little bit more because it's so fantastic. Let me see here. So I think we're at 106. I hope this is a moment that you like, Jibs. I love it. Maybe we'll start right here.
It's the idea of the song. You know, like, well, you talk about influence or inspiration, and all those things are part of you, and all that information that gets stored is just going to come out in a different way. And I don't know. So I guess I feel like it's both, actually. I feel like, yeah, there is like a person who can, you know, like propel all these things out and make, you know, be like, this is the genius that did that. But, you know, if you think of someone like Herzog or the Lily Tomlin or my heroes, the two heroes of my life.
So I might have pulled a little bit later in the quote than I meant to, but I think that's okay. Yeah, so I guess the quote I think I wanted to get to is that it's hard to feel like a legitimate person when no one legitimizes you in culture, you know, the way that you're legitimized by fame. And that happens to so few people. And that's true. And I think like everything else, or a lot of things explored in this film, there's that duality there with fame. So I'm wondering if you, Jibs, and anyone else really could speak a little bit about it more into this idea of fitting into a scene and the culture of failure, the culture of fame, the culture of influence, and the culture of play. Like, I guess in a simpler question form, what kind of inspires you? I know, Eileen, I saw as we're panning through your room, we see Charles Bernstein and Robert Creeley, and as a Buffalonian, you know, they're staples in our diet.
Buffalonian.
Yeah, Buffalonian.
So delicious.
So yeah, I mean, does anyone want to speak to, I guess, who inspires you as an artist and a maker? And is it important to be legitimized? Like for all the artists that are watching right now, does it matter?
I don't know. I just don't know.
I mean, Eileen said, yeah, I think it's really interesting questions around fame, you know, and the way that predominant commercial culture does or does not dip into like artists' lives. But I'll leave it to these guys because both of them have had definite, you guys have both had definite strong contact with major commercial industries and stuff.
Or do you want to take this, Jib? I thought you were going to jump in. No?
Sure. Well, yeah. So with my contact, well, okay. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many things to say about this, particularly at this moment in time when what I've noticed about younger artists is there's like this, there's like a very clear path to like what constitutes like a star, even if it's like weird performance or drag or like whatever. There's so much media and like representation, and it's, you know, and it's so available and it's so accessible. So I think it's like easier to imagine, I don't know, I getting famous or something now, or like what famous looks like, or what you're supposed to do to get there, and here are the steps, and here is how you gather admirers or whatever it is. And it's like very, I don't like it, you know, because when I, for so long, and I'm sure Eileen can speak to this too, and that, you know, this wasn't, it was never like in my consciousness that I would become any sort of like mainstream-ish, like I would ever be attractive in that way. And that like, how do I say it? It just, I think it's two different things. I think that like fame and legitimacy and art making are not, they're not the same. They're not the same. They're not in the same. One is like business and one is like what you're doing for your like soul and like to live. And I just think that you got to keep that separate. And it's good to feel good and get accolades and get, you know, money or get attention, but like nothing will save you in that way. Like, in my opinion, there's nothing that will make you feel like you've arrived and are now like a real person or whatever. That's like all trauma. You got to go to therapy and you got to deal with your shit so that you can enjoy your stuff and be of service with it and like try to help others with your experience. But I have had experiences where I've gotten everything I wanted, quote unquote, and then been like, oh, I still feel like someone's going to call and be like, we've made a clerical error, you know, or like worse, you know? And that has nothing to do with anything, but like outside stuff has nothing to do with the work. Zero.
Yeah, I guess I feel like there's all these kinds of self-consciousness. I mean, I don't think any of us are artists because we don't like being heard or looked at or considered. And I think probably the first time you ever perform or something, it's, I mean, and maybe, you know, obviously there was stuff you did when you were a kid in grade school and getting on stage when talent shows and things like that. But when I first came to New York and went up to a mic, you know, and it was like, didn't matter whether I was good or bad. I just felt like, oh, did my life just begin? You know, I like the thing that was in my head as a child that I would make something and I would be seen. Like, was that it? Was, you know, and it didn't matter if I was good or bad. It was just that I felt like I had stepped out of my own self-consciousness and stepped into some self-consciousness that was possibly shared, you know. And I feel like it's so random. I mean, I think anybody that has a career for stretches of time, you know, you don't know. I mean, often I've made something or done something and have thought, wow, this is really going to get me what I want and stuff. And then you like run out there with it and stuff and you do it and you're like, you know, like, and nothing happens and you're like, oh. And it's just, it's never any judgment. It's very random what gets attention and what doesn't, you know, within one person's story. And I'm sure that's true for Jibs and for Chet. I mean, it's just like, you know, I don't know why I always think about the Beatles, like, why those 5 guys or 4 guys or however, you know, it was just like, why would that and that and that and that equal that, you know? And I think that it's the same way on this micro level with things that we, you know, it's sort of like the Kennedy poem for a long time was my famous poem, you know, And now I have a poem about peanut butter that is my famous poem. I do not know why that peanut butter poem is just the poem, and people are like, oh, did you write a peanut butter poem? And it's just like, we don't have any, I mean, I just feel like we're making these things and having our own needs and our own needs to survive and our own needs to be seen. And then there's this very random thing that, like, I think there are people who are very calculated and good at like saying, I've worked on this and I'm making this happen. And, but it's like, my experience is that it's the most avant-garde thing is fame, that it just sort of lands for a moment and looks at you and you're like, oh, it's going to be like this now. And then it walks away and then you're like, wait, and you just keep, I mean, I think the good thing about making work is you just get into a habit of it being your survival, and you do it, you do it for this kind of interior fame, like my own glow with my, like, whoa, like, if I'm writing, there are just moments where just I'm on and I can feel it, and it isn't about anybody else being there. And sometimes when somebody else is there, you get to share that thing. But it's such a, it's like fame is like this anonymous charisma that looks at you and you're like, oh, you're seeing me now, and then the charismatic person walks away and you're like, what? I thought you really saw me. And it's really impersonal. And so I feel like we all get good at working beyond that in some way.
I like that you just said it was impersonal, because it is really impersonal. It's sort of just like, and it doesn't mean that I've had people here in LA literally say, like, people who have a lot of money and power say to me, I want to make all your dreams come true. Like, things that, like, I, like, who wouldn't want to hear that, And it doesn't mean that that person doesn't really think that, like, doesn't like it's just, but it's so fleeting, and it doesn't really like what does that even mean? And it's like a story within a story within a story that's like been retold so many times about, like, from the bottom of the barrel, and I was working in a restaurant, and then I blah blah blah, and that does happen, but it doesn't, it's like non-linear. And like Eileen said, like, you get a glimpse of it, and it's pretty, I mean, to tell you the truth, I feel like I'm so glad that I came here to Los Angeles and like had some successes and like some failures, and like really saw things for what they are. Because I still, even though I was like, I know what's up, like, I didn't, like, I was still sort of under a spell that, like, somehow I would be more legitimized by things, or or I don't even know, but that was not the case. So I think it's cool to like be, older and wise and just really know that it doesn't matter, and I don't need anything.
I mean, this rings true for me in that, and I worry about my students. I worry about my child, because before the internet, you know what I mean? Like, I just showed a lot of crazy work to like rooms of 40 or 50 people in Baltimore who did not critique me. They were just like, that's wild. You know what I mean? Make another one. You know what I mean? They weren't like, that's terrible. They were like, just keep going, Like, there were some really crazy things in there. Like, what did you, those like art parents, you know what I mean? Like, I had art parents, who were just sort of like, gave me cameras, and I didn't go to art school at all, and sometimes when I talk to students, I'm like, just go to a community that's cheap to live in, and where there's a warm community, because maybe you need 10 years, I mean, I didn't like make a feature film until I was like 33, you know what I mean? I just bumped around meeting people and like enjoying myself. So it does worry me, the TikTok and all that. I don't know, I'm old, but there is something to be said for like being in rooms of real people who don't critique you and who don't compete against you, but are just sort of like, this is life. We all get together and show each other our crazy work. You know what I mean? It's like a family, you know what I mean? And, definitely there's like super strong critiques of that, because many times it was misogynist, many times it was exclusionary of people of color, many times it was homophobic. And I went through all that in the 90s, like everybody else, you know what I mean? You try to create your own world, your own, you know, and that's what I try to do, to kind of create a separate community, or an additional community with, you know, more queer, female, minority people, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think there's something to be said for that grounding that happens when your first artwork isn't like on TikTok, but when it's like in a group of compassionate, understanding people who just like art for art's sake. I mean, I just feel like those are really important. I don't know if you felt that way when you came to New York, Eileen, but I just felt like those kind of scenes were kind of really, I hope they're still existing. And I think for me, they're very generative.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember that excitement of realizing I was with a crowd of people for the first time who were all doing what I was doing. I mean, it was all different, but it was like, whoa, there's an us to it, you know, because I think we all come up with that lonely artist vision, you know, and it was just like to realize the first step is shedding that, you know. So I think I think part of the beauty of this film is that it is about that in some way, you know. It's sort of like a group of us who are in different ways shedding, you know, and growing through that, I think.
Absolutely. I love that. Let me ask a little bit, Eileen, about some of your work featured in the film. One of the many like quotes I love, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the poem right now. Suppose going blind is momentarily seeing colors and everything and remembering them for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm not quite forming this thought very well.
It was a breakup poem.
It's a breakup poem, and you had a wonderful, well, you had a wonderful quote in there. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you had a wonderful quote in there where you said, before you read the poem, something along the lines of, poets are good at falling in love, but they're like fantastic at breaking up. It's really, yeah, I love that line, and I love that poem. I guess, can you speak just a little bit about some of the work that of each of yours that's featured in the film itself, and kind of how we're seeing, I guess, these like snapshots of your careers and your practices. I know we started to talk about this a little bit, but how did all of you select what pieces and parts of pieces you would show in the film? I know the parts where you're performing, I'm guessing it was somewhat Chet was there and it was happening. But some of the other pieces and moments, kind of circling back to An American Poem, and then, you know, we're in election year right now, we're so close to vote time, and then looking at like that other moment in your career, Eileen, for president. I guess, yeah, how did you choose and select which works you would show?
Well, I think it is that thing. Like, I think Chet, because we were rambling together, it winds up being, there was a period of time, and what was happening in that period of time, or what I was reading, would be what Chet was drawing from. And then within that, I think probably was editing into the film and what made sense, you know. And there was this other thing, which is this anonymous thing, which is the parts of the work that the culture picks. I remember being a younger poet and noticing that older, more established poets were always reading the same fucking poems over and over again. I was like, we were all about proving that we had all this bounty and we had all this different work, and we were always, you know, and thinking, wow, these old timers, they're just, you know, hitting that, there she goes, reading that poem again and stuff. But it's sort of like part of having a career is repetition and understanding there are things you do that, you know, you step on a stage and you know what that piece is going to do. And you might just want to do that tonight. You just might want to run out and get that bang. So there's like that Kennedy poem, and to a certain extent was chosen for me to be that poem that would do that thing, so that I could be there in a particular way, you know. And that's part of the job, is the ritual of being an artist and repeating yourself and figuring out how to be awake inside of things that you've done before, you know, and not letting it and not being kind of weighed down by it, but figuring out how to be lifted by repetition, you know, because there's a lot of it, and there is on every level, but certainly in making work, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be difficult to be present sometimes within a piece that you perform over and over again. Does it kind of bring you back to a place every time you read the same poem, or?
No, because you're always standing in a new place. I mean, Jibs, as a performer, you probably have this experience lots.
Yeah, and that's actually like, sorry, I'm like, that's like some, I guess, part of theater training stuff too, is like always being able to find like the new stuff in the moment. And but what you said, Eileen, about like, oh, maybe I just need to, like, so for me, if I was going to like a new place, or like depending on the venue or an audience that I didn't know, or I mean, there's one piece that I've been doing for like 15 years, and I cannot believe I still do it, and I love doing it. It's so much fun. And it's because I've like mastered it, every little part of it, and like when I'm in it, I can have so much fun, and I can actually be more present than if it's in like, if it's something that's new. It's not what I want to take to like a new audience necessarily. If I'm on tour, if I'm going to like a place that hasn't seen my work before, I usually just pick the bangers and, you know, maybe a couple of experimental things. But that's actually like where you get the most, or for me, where I get the most freedom. I mean, it's just a strange combination of like being inside of a structure and then actually being able to like really play in it and find new things. And yeah, I actually love it. If I get bored of a piece, I just won't do it, I guess. I don't know. I just don't do what I don't want to do. Why would I? I'm an artist. So, that's part of the thing that we get, is to do what we like to do. That's actually the thing that, like, sometimes I'm like, I'll go down a path in my head about, you know, oh, I really want someone to hire me to do this kind of job, or I wish I was in a play that, you know, I want to be acting in something that, you know, what, like this kind of work. And then I'm like, oh, I can just do it myself. Like all the things, I can just do it. I can make it for myself. And that's just, I think, the greatest freedom about choosing this lucrative path to success and legitimacy is that, but also just like how to keep it fun, you know, because I was watching today, actually, I was watching a terrible movie, and I was like, I want to be in a show where I get to say, get in the house, because it was like, you know, like like someone protecting their family, you know, get in the house now. And I was like, I'm gonna write something where I get to say that, you know, where I get to be like a woman who wears like a long sweater that has a belt and like a blowout that's like tumbling around. It's like, you know, like I can just do it. I can do that if I want to. So I don't know if that made any sense, but and in relationship to the movie, though, it was just sort of like whatever I was doing. But what was awesome, though, is that the thing that's highly featured is the Soggy Glasses Homo's Odyssey thing, which was kind of my largest like production value piece. And it was so cool to have Chet like facilitate getting it shot really beautifully. And the Red Cat show was really good. My opening night show at BAM was stiff. You know, it was like I had just finished it like an hour before. So it was really nice that was what made it in. So
yeah, I mean, for me, like, I mean, of course I spent like an inordinate amount of time like I listened to all of Eileen's books on audiobook. And I mean, I will say that, I mean, for me, because I knew everything that was going on in their lives, and not in like a, you know, tell all way, but like I knew what was going on for everyone. Like I knew what people were going through, because we were having these really authentic conversations and interviews. And you know, and people would be like, oh, please don't use this, or do use that, or, you know, whatever. But the pieces that did make it in were definitely very impacted by, metaphorically, or, you know, relationally, to for what was happening for people. I felt emotionally, you know, the different kind of, I was really intrigued by Eileen's kind of statements in Marfa, in the first Marfa round of interviews, of holding this younger self, you know what I mean? And this younger self being like a kind of an entity, or like a character, or like a self that was being managed by this older self, you know what I mean? So the younger, you know what I mean, sort of being like, there's this kind of prolific, like very beloved kind of early Eileen Miles voice, you know what I mean, that has morphed and changed and gone in so many different directions. And, you know, so the younger voice speaking to the older voice, and vice versa. And also just, I mean, Heather Love's comments about damned or elected, you know what I mean, sort of damned or elect, and also just, you know, I could sense everything that people were going through emotionally. But for me, it was like finding, and Jibbs's journey, but it was finding the creative work that didn't have to talk about what was going on, but the work could say it, you know what I mean? So I think that is a layer of what's going on in the film, is me very specifically selecting works. And thank God that was like some kind of weird, miraculous shoot at the Red Cat that Red Cat facilitated. I shot it from like the back row with like a DSLR. I mean, it's I don't know. That was like one of those magic things that worked out. I don't even know, you know. But again, it was really very that all that was intentional. I mean, all of that stuff was intentionally in relation to what people were going through. And I mean, Jibbs's whole move to LA, you know what I mean? All of those possibilities, like, you know, everything that Eileen was going through with all kinds of different situations, and just, you know, and also, you know, there's lots of remarkability for people also, although, you know, this isn't really true. People are like, well, and Eileen's in the middle of all, like, New York is Eileen's community, and there's like this massive community, you know what I mean? Then Eileen goes to Texas to be alone, which isn't really totally true, because Eileen has a huge community in Texas, but you know what I mean? There's sort of the public self, the private self. There's, you know, a lot of those things were going on, but I did, you know, spend a huge amount of time thinking about what works were appropriate to interplay with, even if it wasn't going to be explicitly shown on the film, and then like, but what I knew was kind of happening for people in a respectful way, which is authentic. You know what I mean? I was kind of trying to bring that, the way you might direct an actor. I was sort of like directing the creative works, to like kind of take us along in a way that related to the person, because people's lives are like, you know, people's lives are pretty mundane, you know what I mean? So, you know, they're you know, it's not that kind of documentary, you know what I mean? It's not like it's not a documentary. I don't really do that kind of work, actually. And where I lead us down a path, you know, a constructed path that has nothing to do with the person, but has to do with like a really good editor somewhere. I edited the whole film myself. I mean, I got notes, but I edited it myself. I mean, I wouldn't put it in anyone's hands, actually, because I was encouraged to do so. And I was like, I don't even, number one, know where they would start. Number two, they don't really know these people. I don't even know how they would even know to know them. You know what I mean? Editing is very political, actually.
Well, editing is that is the writing. That's where the story is all made and told. And what I love that you do is that you create these connections. You don't force them down my throat as a viewer, though. You direct me, perhaps. You use the language of the work itself to direct the viewer. I think you're creating this platform, and you can see that background as a curator, which is why I probably keep bringing up all of that kind of stuff. But I do love it. I think it's so effective, and I can relate and understand. I think that it's hard to give up a work that you've done every single part of, and then expect someone to care about these people that you care about so deeply, and these stories in the same way. So I'm glad you just got notes. I think it was the right choice.
Yeah.
It's
I was
really
lucky to get the notes, but yeah.
absolutely. Was there anything that you had to cut out work-wise or story-wise that like kind of broke your heart or was hard to let go of?
I mean, I'm like, you know, part of me is an academic, and like there's definitely like really amazing commentary by Heather Love and Stuart Coleman. There's just amazing commentary that the artists that the artists themselves should see, because so many like really renowned historians and curators are immense fans of all of these artists. You know what I mean? And I will release those interviews, but the in-depth kind of language and analysis that people have for their work that's way beyond the film. Like I did feel kind of pained, like Tavia Nyong'o did an hour long about Jibs that is just incredible, deep examination of the work. You know what I mean? So a lot of that stuff, you know, Maggie Nelson, 90 minutes on Eileen Miles. I mean, it's kind of incredible. I mean, it's historical for me. You know what I mean? So at some point that will be available, but you know, yeah, there are lots and lots of amazing, you know, things that had to come out, you know, so much more of just the actual creative work that, you know, but yeah, I can't think of anything specifically that was, oh, Flory, I will say, I did a whole cut of, that was really Flory and Barbara together. And that was sort of like, maybe it should be more about Barbara, but I mean, Flory is astounding. You know, I mean, Flory won the National Medal of Honor. Like, I mean, Flory is an American genius. I mean, she's just very humble. You know what I mean? But I wish, I mean, if anything, it would be for more Flory's story to be in, because she's such a remarkable part of the whole New York scene that Barbara is a part of. And plus she's handling Barbara's whole legacy. I mean, she's amazing. So I would say that's the only thing for me. I kind of would have liked to talk about Flory a bit more. She would be mortified probably, but she might let a little bit out later. I don't know.
Well, she shouldn't be, because she is magnetic and delightful, and I would watch hours of Flory. So, oh, wonderful. Let me ask, I don't want to hold you all too long. I could honestly stay here forever, and I'm sure, I think there's about 60 people on right now watching that don't seem like they want to go anywhere either, but I don't want to hold you forever because I know that you're all incredibly busy. Can I just ask 2 more questions? Is that okay? So, and also say, if you do want to stay, please do. Just let me know in the message board. But let me ask, what is everyone working on now? If you want to talk about that. I know some makers don't actually want to talk about works in progress, but I did notice a couple were in the film in various moments, and so I'm curious what everyone's kind of like. Where's your heart at right now in your work?
I have a couple of things go. I'm doing an anthology called Pathetic Literature. So I'm putting together, like, I think pathetic is such a great word, and it's always been so negative. And I want it to be like queer, where we take pathetic back and say that these are beautiful, pathetic works. And so it's something I've been into for a while. And so my publisher Grove was like, why don't you make that book, you know? And so it's a pain in the ass, but it's actually, I'm almost done with it. And so that's been really fun. And beyond that, I'm working on a really big novel, like 1,000 pages. I just want to do like a giant work. And so I'm in that too, it's always one thing is inside of the other thing is the inside of the other thing. And it's like a dog race. It's at a certain point you have to decide which dog you're going to let win. So I've got to let pathetic win first so I can be free to cut over to the novel, you know. So that's where I'm at.
It's nice to cut pathetic a break like that and let him get ahead of the dog race.
Exactly. Let pathetic win.
What about you, Jibs?
Well, I guess my sort of like big project is this thing I've been cooking up for a couple of years. And then I got a creative capital this year to work on it, which is a live show called Titanic Depression. which is based on the movie Titanic. And there's a lot in it about genius, like ruining people's lives and destroying the planet. And like, you know, including the actual director of that film, James Cameron, which is the name of my actual dad. They have the same name. And he used to say he could do a lot of damage if he had that credit card. And it's sort of like about this, you know, it's a retelling of the story of the Titanic. But the cool thing about the show is that it's live film and live me. And it's a collaboration with my friend Sue Slagle, who's like goes by Susie and does all this live film and video stuff with like Negative Land and Letitia Tsunami. And she's just a genius. She's like, she's very smart. So basically, I'm going to be improvising and scripted all these characters that are on the Titanic. And Sue will be like live feeding me stuff on the screen that I can improvise with. And I can actually like control animation of these characters' mouths. So it's basically like this octopus is escaping the warming waters and he disguises himself as like a giant lady's hat, you know? And then the like young lassie meets anyway. So a lot of it is like animals and characters. I don't know if I'm describing this well. So that's what I'm supposed to be working on. But I don't know, like, it's just been a little bit. I haven't had a lot of juice for much lately. So I did do that one weirdo night, and I really hope that someone wants to like make more of those with me, because it was so much fun to get to work with artists and perform again, you know, to an empty room. But it was great.
Well, I would love that. I was bummed when I found out that I was wrong and it's not streamable. Because I used to live down the street from Zebulon a long time ago. So even that place has a special little.
Yeah. Well, it is streamable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But it's not a live stream.
I thought it was like ongoing, like we could go every week.
No.
I was just projecting, I think.
God, I wish. It's actually really hard to do that. The technology is like, to get something that like looks good and has a great like band, you know, to get like a really nice looking live performance if that's live streamed is really hard. I mean, not hard, it's just expensive.
It's expensive, yes.
It's what I'd say is hard. Actually, it's just expensive. Yeah. Eileen, I'm excited about your novel. That's great news. I didn't know that.
Thank you.
I'm a novel queen.
Oh.
I love novels. Would you say 2 years?
Oh, probably, I would, yeah, a few, 2 or 3, maybe 4. Who knows? You know, it's sort of like there's a lot. I'm still making a big mess, and then I got to edit it down. So
I can. Yeah, it sounds hard.
Yeah, both sound amazing.
Yeah, I thought, why now, Scarred? Why not me? You know, it's like,
yeah. No, not why not you. No try, only do. I'd watched all the Star Wars again recently. In pandemic, because I'm searching for a bigger like source of energy not in the universe, and those movies like really do it for me. It's so weird. I'm such a basic.
Which movies?
The Star Wars movies, the original ones.
Oh wow, yeah.
You should watch the Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers series because
that was, you know, it's
the Hero
funny.
Journey.
You've got to watch it.
The Hero's Journey. I was thinking of it when I was listening to you in the film, and you were talking about Lily Tomlin and Herzog and your other heroes. Yeah,
it's all streamable. That whole thing's streamable, Jibs. It's amazing. It's like total 80s. You got to get it because it's consulted on Star Wars. You know.
Oh yeah.
It's like we have a force, you know, we have this force and it can be used for good or evil.
Yeah.
Or just like yes or no, or like, are you gonna, I don't know.
Because he talks about Star Wars and then he'll tell like Navajo, an obscure Navajo, myth centered around, a specific woman. You know what I mean?
Sounds great. I mean,
You gotta hit it up.
okay.
There's that conversation with Phil Moyers and Joseph Campbell. I think it's on audio. Yeah, it's so I think you would enjoy it probably. Hopefully,
you would just take it you got to absorb it and like let it rip right through your brain.
I wanted to
Use the
mention one
force,
thing
please.
though. I need to use my force, but I did want to mention one thing, which was that I was having a conversation with a friend, performer, peer, whatever, and I was like, sometimes I'm like, am I just so out of touch? Like that's I have this big worry that I'm really out of touch, and that my big fear is that I'm going to end up like a bitter like performance artist woman who like never got their justice, like, and is complaining about all the time, because I've met a lot of my heroes and that is where that's like what but then I realized like, oh, that is absolutely a character, so now I have a new thing to work on, which is a bitter cunty old performance artist who's like, I've been doing this. I was in the East Village. I should have got my NEA, just whatever.
Bitter genius. Bitter genius.
Bitter genius. Your next film.
Yeah.
It's never enough. It's never enough. I've met some people through my brother in Hollywood, and it's
never enough.
It's really actually never enough.
Yeah.
There's always something going on.
Wow.
Didn't get the boyfriend you wanted, didn't have the baby you wanted,
Well, I do feel like there's a specific thing that happens with women. Maybe it's predominantly white women, I'm sure. When, it's like I don't know, like I guess maybe women of since it's like more my mother's generation, but when you are aware all of a sudden that, you're not up and coming anymore, and that you're also not like a legend yet. And then you see other people like, I don't know, like I've met some of my sort of people I really admired, and I felt like they were very unhappy with the way that their careers went, even though I think that they're like brilliant and have inspired me so much. And it was depressing. It's depressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's, yeah. There was a line in the film, like at certain points in this project, I was down really low. The release of the film was like, I think I'd said in my interview with you, Anna, I couldn't even do any, the way that a film is supposed to be released, this film couldn't even, it was like, because of Barbara's death, and I couldn't do any traditional marketing because it just felt too smarmy. So I had to just kind of like, walk away from it. And I'm just so lucky that people sort of like picked it up and ran with it. But there were like, I think, yeah, because Jibs at the end of your interview, like, there are many low moments when you have to, be like, it does get better, or, yeah, the whole monologue that you do about depression, I would just think of that actually. Sometimes I would actually watch that monologue, the one that's in the film, and it would just make.
Well, I don't have that problem anymore, so I don't relate to.
I know, but it lives on. It helped me. It was my antidepressant. But.
Thank you. Yeah. No. Yeah. It's still very real for sure.
Yeah, and I'm at the currently. Well, I'm scheming up. The pandemic's just been. Releasing this film, the pandemic's been like, of course, had its highs and lows, but I am formulating. I've talked to a lot of different distributors. I kind of have a sense of what's going on. I have, and the film's been taken up internationally by so many different groups and people, and it's being distributed in Spain, just in Spanish and Catalonian. I haven't, there's different paperwork that, nothing's coming to fruition as yet, but like there's sort of things popping around, but a lot of people into the film. But in the United States, that I mean, it's just not happening. There's, you know, I don't really want to go into it, but I'm formulating some ideas for the release that will be innovative and will kind of skirt around some of the traditional means, I think, that will be better. So I'm starting to like get my energy to move toward, you know, getting the thing out. And then I have like lots and lots of footage that has to be either put on Vimeo or released. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but there's lots and lots of archival footage that has to be gone through, and particularly with Flory and Barbara, because that's a whole thing. But and yeah, I'm in pre-production on a short film based on a short story by my sister, but the pandemic's going to put that off. This film production's off. And I've been doing this work with activists on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. There's kind of been a whole arboreal blockading thing, and I am writing a little academic chapter about queer eco-activism and trans eco-activism. I've become really interested in, I've always been really interested in activists, and then, like my film that Eileen was talking about was like about activists, and I go and meet with activists a lot because I'm interested in them. Kind of like artists, like activists are also kind of odd people who I'm curious about what motivates them, you know what I mean? And many of them are female. So I have sort of been working on that. And there's sort of the way that activism has to do with kind of phenomenological relationship with nature. Like I'm more interested in like, they're not really doing it so much for politics, but it does have to do with some kind of phenomenological relationship they have that's interesting to me. But we'll see. But yeah, have to be.
Remember when my aunt asked in that when we were screening it in Philadelphia, and my aunt was in the audience, and somebody asked a question about dogs.
Yeah.
All the dogs in the movie, and then I was like, well, you know, having a relationship with an animal is really queer. And then my aunt was like, oh no, really loud, don't say it, Chips. She thought I was going to talk about like fucking animals. And then I was like, I like that about the, you know, yes, relationships with animals and nature are queer. They're queer friendships.
Sure, absolutely.
They are, and they're
absolutely
not. And the language for it is very. I mean, I have like been looking at a
limited.
lot of queer and trans. Yeah, I do a lot of interviews with people because I love doing interviews. But like, people have really struggled for language. Like people who've been sitting in tree blockades for like 60, 90 days, when they try to describe their relationship with the tree, like it's to find language, you know what I mean? And it's a grasping, but it's very, I mean, that's my little chapter is kind of about this, like how to take kind of queer phenomenology and extend it to kind of eco phenomenology. Cause I feel that way. I feel abnormally addicted in relation because I grew up in a very rural place, and I have very strong feelings when I go, you know what I mean? I don't really know how to articulate that, but so it's helping me articulate it probably through working with these very young activists. There's a lot of very young trans and queer activists actually in Appalachia working that wasn't happening like 15 years ago. So it's been an interesting, so I don't know. Yeah, for me, I like the artists. I like the activists. I like people who knows what's, I want to know, you know, why them, you know, and it's always a really intriguing. Also, the whole community relies on them, but then they're shunned. Also, you know what I mean? Everybody wants them to go out, you know, it's a whole social phenomenon that I'm interested in. Ultimately, they're the ones who, you know, I feel like artists and activists like save everything, and they're always put in these precarious and controversial positions that, you know, are very stressful for them. And I don't know, it's very, I find it intriguing, but I'm also going to do some narrative. I mean, after doing, this is like the documentaries are really expensive and they're really long, and there's really a lack of control. So I'm kind of want to maybe do this little narrative piece. I did that after my last film too. But I direct some actors, maybe stuff like that. So, but the short film addresses my brother's. My sister wrote a really amazing story about my brother's relationship with his son when he was going through a heavy addictive phase, and my nephew's reportage. There's some reportage that he gave to my sister that she wrote into the story, and so it's sort of about like what happens there's like, look, there's hundreds of thousands of children who have now grown up with addicted parents. You know what I mean? I guess this is kind of adding to their story. Like, what's it like to grow up with an addictive parent where the parent's not 100% evil? This is happening. People are growing up with parents who are in altered states. And there's
What?
that. There's bad things about that.
I've never heard of that. Yeah.
Right, to bring the news. But again, it's sort of like, it seems like something obvious, but there's just actually not a lot of material. You know, and a lot of those children in West Virginia are in college now because the opioid addiction has been going on for 2 decades. You know what I mean? So those stories of like, how do you negotiate through the world, caring for your parent, watching, you know, and it just happened in my family in a really specific way. And so again, there'd probably be a social practice component to it, but it's not a sad story or a horrible story, but it is a story about how to deal if you're made to go on a court-ordered weekend with a parent who's not necessarily completely dangerous, but is like not a normal parent or whatever. I don't know what a normal parent is. I don't even know, but so we'll see.
Parent in constant duress or with
just managing their thing, which many of us have already for our own parents, and it's just sort of that story. But anyway.
Well, that all sounds amazing. I hope you send them over to us when you're done. I mean, I love the eco work that's where my heart is and where my practice is as well. So I'd love to see your new work there.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
We've done it. I think we've done it, guys.
I think we really did it.
We've done it. I can't believe they're with us still, the people.
It's done.
Thank you to the people, and thank you to these
Thank you, people. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody.
Thank you, Chet.
I mean, I'm happy to stay on and take questions. I know that Jibbs and Eileen probably have to go, but I mean,
I have to go. Yeah, maybe you should stay on and take some questions.
Yeah, I'll stay on and take questions if people want questions.
Okay.
If people want to do that, I'm happy to do that. If not, I can definitely go have some dessert right now or something. But
well, you definitely deserve it. There were a couple of questions.
But I would encourage Eileen and
yeah, I gotta go. I love you guys. Yeah.
Love you, Eileen. So good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Really appreciate it.
It's good to see you, Chet.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'd love to see you soon. I'll bother you. I'll bug you.
Okay, same.
So, Chet. Go ahead.
Jibbs, are you taking questions?
Oh, I can stay on for like another maybe 5.
Okay. Maybe if there's a question for Jibbs, then we could do that. So
if there is one, I don't know.
There's one there's a real sweetie question that's for any and everyone. What was your favorite moment making the film, or your favorite moments? What's your favorite song of all time? No, I'm joking. It's a hard one, actually.
Wait, my favorite moment in the film or making the film?
Making the film. So like behind the scenes, y'all together kind of doing.
Oh,
too.
What's that?
Maybe moments easier because
I don't remember like I mean I watching the movie, like really I just liked watching yeah, I don't have I don't know. That's not I can't answer that. There's too many like sweet parts of it, but I guess when making the movie I thought it was really fun when we got to shoot at BAM. I thought that was really special. And there were like people outside getting interviewed. It just felt really like it was such a big moment for me, and it felt like it was really sweet and made me feel really good to have that documented in that way.
That's fantastic. What about you, Chet?
I mean, there was like, I mean, every shoot was like, you know, well, you know, stressful, you got to have the money and all that. But once the things were happening, I mean, all of them were really exhilarating. I mean, the moments with Eileen and Marfa were amazing, just to go to Marfa. I mean, being the Jib's closet thing for me was like that was like just a moment where I like knew the whole portrait was going to work in this really specific way. And plus I was just like, wow, like it just, oh my God, that was just like being in this like archive or something. And the stuff with Barbara that I discussed, because just at the end of when Barbara came to Temple University and they were like, the doctors don't know how she's even doing this. And so a lot of the stuff with Barbara and toward the end, after I'd learned about her diagnosis and her recurrence, every shoot was fraught, but also just intense, you know. So it was huge responsibility and also just very tender. And I knew it was history in the making for so many people who love her. And so I just was honored to like accidentally be there, you know. So.
Well, not fully an accident, otherwise she had you there.
True. Yeah.
And I think very, very important, you know, when I met her very briefly in passing, she was showing Welcome to This House in Buffalo, but couldn't come. So I was in New York, and at the time lived between the two places. And we were talking about her work, and she had all those boxes in the film just right behind her. And like, I just remember this image of talking to her, and the word babushka is just behind her. And who knows what was in the babushka box. But we were talking a lot about legacy and archive and where you find your home, and how as an artist she felt that you found your home in your work. Like that's your place of meaning making. That's where you share your love with the people that you love, and the people beyond the people that you love, and the people of the future that you love that you'll never get to know, but they'll know you so well. And so all of this stuff, I think it's very important. And I think that, yeah, this piece is archival, just all like right from the get-go, and is an amazing resource and kind of introduction to some artists that really deserve the attention, and yeah, can inspire so many people. I was just so blown away by this film, and so inspired by it, and it seems like a lot of people were too. Let me ask just one more question, and I'm not sure, this I think we definitely touched on a little bit, but a couple came through in this vein, and I'm not sure if it's before or after, but just to make sure. Wow, the film is so beautiful, and it's so wonderful to hear all of you talking about your work. I'd be interested to hear all of your thoughts on intersectionality and how that impacts queer community and its connections to other intersecting communities. So it's kind of that's it.
I can speak to that in terms of, I mean, you know, for myself personally, just a program and a mission has been to try to create intersectionality as much as I possibly can, and the energy and the labor, you know, of myself that I can afford. I mean, if, you know, some people are like, oh, can you just do another one of these? Like, can you just keep doing these? Can you just keep making these or whatever? And sort of like, I mean, if there was some sort of funding or, you know what I mean, it would be possible, but this shouldn't be the end of this conversation. I mean, the intersectionality should be sort of the way that this would inspire somebody else who is not of my race, class, economic status, whatever, to sort of bounce off of this into their own thing. You know, working with, as a white filmmaker, I mean, working with African-American subjects, which I've done before, there were heavy considerations for Kamei and Rashida. They sort of centralize African-American labor and African-American resources in their lives as an ethical. They have, like everyone else, they have ethics and integrity about like who they work with and how their stories are told. And how they wanted to tell the story with me. You know what I mean? So I think it's that sensitivity, and you know, as a filmmaker, asking questions and just listening, and like not being pushy. I don't know. There were certain things where I was like, oh, how do you feel doing this? And you know, this could be something interesting to do. And you know, and Rashid would be like, this is not good timing, and like that's not really something I want to do. So I would just kind of drop it. You know what I mean? Unless I thought it was really important, then I might ask one more time. You know what I mean? But it's sort of like, again, being in that relational process of really trying to listen to like where people are coming from, which was the kind of the ethic, the ethos of this film anyway. And it's very complicated to make work that's documentary, where you might be going into somebody's house or talking about somebody's personal life. You know what I mean? It can go wrong very quickly, right, on both sides. So again, the idea is to sort of inspire people to tell their own stories. I will help you if I can. I try to help who I can. You know what I mean? I curate, you know, it's a big project in Baltimore for a long time to bring people together. And, you know, just trying to be open, but no one artist can do it all. And the line between being in your own integrity and sticking with what you know, but also not being exclusionary is very complicated. It's not at all resolved. I mean, it's just trying to inspire and be sensitive and listen and try to, you know, figure out when it's your turn and when it's not your turn, when you need to speak and when you really don't need to speak. I mean, these are all things we're all learning like every day, you know what I mean? Like how to do the thing, get out of the way when you need to get out of the way, you know. And I think for a lot of white people, including myself, who have considered themselves to be very into social justice, when you're asked to step aside, you know what I mean? Sometimes this can be hard, you know what I mean? So it's just knowing when to like get out of the way and kind of, you know, I think, I think if you have a trust fund, you shouldn't apply for public art funds. You know, I have feelings like this. I think if you have a trust fund, like you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? They're just, if you're a white person and like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just have.
What if you have a can that's nailed to the floor upside down? Or what if you have some aristocratic white idiots in your family that blew all their money in the past on, you know, because they were alcoholics? And
right. or like your brother who was an addict, like sucked all the money out of the family, so there's none left. You know, it's sort of like everybody.
I have so many stories like that. I have the whitest money tragedy stories. It's just collapse. I mean, this, you know, and then also like so grateful that they.
Yeah,
it's just the legacy. Yeah.
You can't know everything, and like you have to listen. You can't know every, you know, no one can be like the most politically correct. You know, I've been at the Flaherty Film Seminar and other places where I've said things that I thought were just like the grooviest thing ever, and like some 19-year-old would stand up and like castigate me. You know what I mean? And I have to receive that. You know what I mean? And I have to be like, I just got castigated because I used the word queer in the wrong way that they didn't like. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like it's this never-ending learning. We all just have to kind of be sensitive and try to listen, and you know.
I think that, you know, it's interesting that it's like looping back to this idea that like where you said listening. Like I do think that people people, I don't want to say people, but just like me, like what I want and what I imagine is coming at like is to be seen. And like that's just such a basic thing. It's such a basic need, and it's so like the levels and the multitudes of how like dysfunctional that is, like, and who gets seen and who gets heard. And it's like bringing awareness to that is, I mean, it's really powerful. And I feel like I've fucked up in class, and like, I mean, I told my class to watch Showgirls, and I didn't give them a trigger warning. And, you know, I'm like this, you know, 90s sex freak from San Francisco. So I was just kind of like, well, and it wasn't about the content of the film. It was like a directorial exercise. And they were not happy about it. And it was great. They like totally spoke up, and they're just so like, I mean, I didn't do anything like that when I was in school. I was never like, this content is upsetting to me. Like, I didn't even know you could say that. And, you know, they're not into critical distance to like, or this particular group was not. And I just felt like I was like, really had to check myself to not be like, these kids they're so sensitive and they just don't want to push up against anything and they don't want to, you know. And I'm like, well, you know, maybe it is time for like a lot of things to just be like over, you know. And
I think I mean, for me also, the avant-garde was sort of like older male artists being like in a cold warehouse somewhere, being like, sit in this couch and watch, you know, watch this Michael Snow film. You know what I mean?
oh my
and,
God.
You know, hopefully, you know, it'll harm you into being a great artist. It'll just alienate you into. It's all about alienation. You know, it's going to alienate you into being a great artist. You know, and yes, that I could see, like, even, you mean, by the late 90s into the early aughts, like those, just, you know, thinking about that traumatized communities don't need to be further alienated by a Michael Snow film. You know what I mean? Like, the projects of modernity, you know, aren't helping people for whom modernity was not a success. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I will, again, I would wish we had some other people here who could speak about that. You know what I mean? And that would be another Zoom or another film. But yes, there's many things about the projects of fine art and the projects of the avant-garde that have been a total failure. You know, I mean, Barbara Hammer is amazing. You know, she really was talking about touch and empathy and bodies in the 70s and with queer communities, and that's why I think she's resonating so much. And she's become sort of a meta influence now, because she was sort of not unlike, you know, a lot of more very intellectual kind of avant-garde. And she has her own intellect, but sort of, I don't know if intellectual is the right way, but sort of cerebral or removed from the body or removed from that. You know, she's very prescient, as I think are all the people in the film. But yeah, I think that what art is for and what the avant-garde is for are big questions, you know. And I had those impulses when I was that age. I mean, I would see an older male artist and I would be like, I want to undo everything that person did. I want to crush that person. That person's a misogynist. You know what I mean? I had those exact same thoughts. Like, where are the queer people? Like,
yeah, but what I'm saying, like, is that I feel like the awareness now is that maybe in this time, you know, you would have gotten the opportunity to say that, like, you know, in dialogue, instead of saying like, yeah, like, so I feel like younger folks are really like, oh, we have this option now to say, this is making me feel really like uncomfortable and like not good. And that is that's kind of extraordinary, because you know it can be
absolutely
sort of embarrassing or whatever. I mean, it's like, what's the harm? You know, the harm is really on who's being harmed. It's like, I'm not really being harmed. Like, I'm just sort of like embarrassed or something.
And parenting's really changed. Like, I mean, the way that I'm parenting my child as opposed to the way I was parenting. I mean, it's just people, you know, my child has a voice in everything from day one. You know what I mean? So again,
I disagree with, though. You need to shut that down. That is, I can get with it on an adult level, but with the children, you need to fix that, Chet.
I know. They're running their households. They're running it.
I know.
Anyway, many more questions?
Wild. Yeah.
I think that's good. You have been so generous and so patient, and thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. Definitely a highlight for me. Cannot, to anyone watching, recommend the film highly enough. Do watch it. Also can't recommend the Barbara Hammer installation of evidentiary bodies highly enough. That film, or that triptych, that envelopment, that installation, I don't know the right word exactly, but it really punctured me. And that sound, the music still haunts me. I mean, through installing and everything, writing about it, you watch it many, many times. So, but I think it's incredible, and it'll only be up for a short time and very, very limited, unfortunately, because of COVID. So to all of you listening and watching in Buffalo, don't miss the opportunity to see this piece. It's incredible. And Barbara was working on it in the film. And
yeah, to see the film and then to see Queer Genius and then go to that, and then to go see the evidence would be definitely like just experientially and art historically, like that would be a good kind of arc. Is it? Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, she was working on that piece the whole time.
And it's incredible. It might be one of my favorites. It really is breathtaking, and especially for those of us here in the Rust Belt, like we know cancer in a meaningful way, and having Tony Conrad, who I love dearly, was actually a pretty close friend of mine. Having that echo of the type of sound that he would make in it. I mean, there's a lot of ghosts in that piece, and in a way that's really incredible. I think would touch you even if you don't have those experiences. So yeah, but yeah, thank you. Everything is incredible. And also thank you. The music in the film is incredible as well. And that should be at least mentioned before we hang up our Zooms. So good. And it's also the trailer, because Chet is amazing and incredibly generous. And we're so grateful to them. I'm so grateful.
Thank you, Anna. Good to see you, Chet. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Nice.
Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for everything, and I hope people enjoy the film. And yeah, I'm working on a whole scheme to kind of get it released, probably online. It looks amazing in the theater. I hope it has some additional theater. It looks great on the big screen too. So hopefully, some of those screenings will come back. There'll be another watching party on Tuesday night in University of North Carolina, and then Pittsburgh on the 15th, the Real Q Festival. And then it'll be in Taiwan, in Taipei, Mexico, and Oslo. Again, Oslo is going to do a digital edition because it went over really well in Oslo and Norway. The Norwegians love this film, apparently. I don't know it's big in Norway.
The audience is always there, just kind of. And we love it here in Buffalo, honestly. Like,
I can tell. Well, I love Buffalo. I drove 8 hours to do a show in Buffalo, and then I drove 8 hours back in the same night. So
where was the show?
I can't even remember. It was. I think Tony was there. Tony came to the show and said, "Oh, it's good," because I met Tony previously, and he was like, "It's good to see you." He's like, "Yeah, I've been trying to remember this guy from Baltimore in the '70s who played like drums with these bones. You know what I'm talking about?" And I was like, "What?" It's only a question that Tony could ask, like only a person could be like, "Do you remember that person who played drums, but it was only with bones in their hands?" And I was like, I'll try to, I'll ask around, but I can't specifically remember any such person around the experimental music scene that, is so hilarious. But yeah.
That is a great introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again, Chet. This has been so much fun. And I hope that you come to Buffalo and give us a shout when you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love Hall Walls, everything. So you guys are awesome. All right. Bye. Have a great night. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care.